Hey guys, we're going to start a science fiction book read along and discussion group. Really excited about this. The first book that we're going to get started with is a book called Terraformers by Annalee Newitz. The Terraformers, sorry. I think one of the goals is to maybe read about 5 or 6 pages from the first chapter, which is about half of these chapters, and then leave a little bit of room for discussion at the end. And then pick up with the next chapter in the next recording. And so we're going to go a little bit slowly, but hopefully it gives folks a chance to keep up with us in their busy lives. One of the things that's really exciting about this book, I feel like it's very interesting. It's a kind of focused on terraforming other worlds. I think I would be really excited about kind of a matching this or following this up closely with another book that was put out by Becky Chambers. And that book is called To Be Taught If Fortunate. I think that's a little bit shorter, a novella. But it's focused on the opposite, which is altering the human body to meet a new environment. So it kind of might be an interesting compare-contrast. I think there's some other books out there that would be also interesting to follow this one up with, but let's see how it goes as we go along. So with no further ado, the Terraformers, Part 1. Settlers. Year 59,006. Planet Sask-E. Mission Ecosystem Maintenance. Chapter 1. Pleistocene Fetishist. When in doubt, don't kill anyone. From the Environmental Rescue Team Handbook. Destry could smell the smoke long before she saw its improbable source. There was some kind of person, possibly Homo sapiens, tending a fire at the edge of the boreal forest. She squinted, trying to make out details from half a click away. The person's skin was so pale she guessed it had hardly met real sunlight, which meant they were definitely not a stray worker from one of the construction camps. When the intruder crouched next to the flame, she caught a glimpse of red beard merging into a tangle of hair. In their hands, a hare was speared and cooking on an expensive alloy spit. The sight was horrifying, and Destry flinched back reflexively. "Let's stop," she whispered to her mount, a thick-barreled moose with red-brown fur and a crown of antlers spreading from his forehead, like a pair of massive cupped hands. He flicked an ear in acknowledgement as she slid off his back and into his long shadow. Sinking down on one knee, Destry pressed her bare fingers into the soil, spreading them wide, establishing a high-bandwidth connection with the local ecosystem. Thousands of sensors welcomed her into the planet's network, their collective perceptions knitting together from shards of cached memory, fragments of recorded sensation and perception. In this state, she too was a sensor, processing data through her eyes, nose, tongue, skin, and ears. What she perceived she shared with the ecosystem. She could feel the sensors collaboratively reviewing the scene from her perspective, learning that she wanted to know more about the mammal at the edge of the forest. It was like her body had become the land. Her awareness stretched forward, racing through root systems and over insects, tasting acid levels in the soil. The person's feet on the ground registered as pressure on her back, and she smelled redox reactions in the fire. Each sensor's evaluation joined the swelling chorus in her ears as the tiny machines voted on what their data points might mean. Polymer, hair, carnivore, unprocessed excrement, dead trees, carbon cycle perturbation, predator, metal, fur, synthetic microbiome. As Destry's data surged across the field and into the forest, the sensors could see what she did, and their analysis coalesced into a strong probability. Homo sapiens in the region for 8 days, causally linked to tree loss, small mammal loss, excrement buildup, complex toxins. But there was no data emanating from the person, save for a persistent encrypted stream aimed at an orbital satellite. Out here in the bush, she didn't have the tools to analyze it. All she had were implants that made sensors recognize her as one of their own. She was the only ranger built this way. All her colleagues back home had to use bulky access devices if they wanted to ask a flower about its nitrogen uptake. Disconnecting from the ecosystem, Destry unfolded her muscular frame and ambled into talking range with the intruder. Her cropped gray-black hair was matted with sweat, and a trickle found its way through the road dust on her cheek, revealing a streak of deeply tanned skin. Wind pricked a few tears from her blue eyes. She kept her hands visible. Basic protocol in environmental rescue team was to approach in peace, no weapons drawn, aiming to help. "Hey, stranger," she called after a few minutes. "I'm ERT Ranger Destry Thomas. Do you know you're on unoccupied land?" The person looked up, their flat, blank face twitching into an awkward grin. Definitely Homo sapiens. They stood, technical jumper gleaming dull gray in the late afternoon sun. Now that she was closer, Destry could see a small cabin tucked into the trees, next to a collapsible trellis where a few pelts were stretched. Mink, hare, beaver. A flicker of outrage licked on the inside of her ribs, but she kept it in check. No point in getting flustered. "Who are you? What are you doing on this land?" The person's mouth worked as if they hadn't spoken for a while. Good evening, ERT Ranger Destry Thomas. Don't think I've ever seen environmental rescue on a private planet." Destry ignored his comment and ran her hands through the waist-high grass, connecting to the sensors that dusted each blade. Whatever was happening inside the person's encrypted stream, it was getting thicker. Data poured furiously and shot back up again. She stopped a couple of meters away from the fire. "What's your name, stranger?" One hand was free, the other settled lightly on her holstered gun, slung low over her right hip. "Name's Charter. I'm not looking for trouble, Ranger. I'm here to experience the Pleistocene. It's the purest environment for mankind." She groaned to herself. Charter. Charter was the default male name for Homo sapiens remotes. No wonder he was regurgitating that fat data stream. Someone was controlling him from off-world, probably thousands of light years away, using this proxy body to get their jollies in the ecosystem she'd sworn to protect. Out there, in the volume of galactic space claimed by the League, some people believed that you weren't really human unless you'd experienced a Pleistocene environment on an Earth-like world. Hence the lure of her planet, Sask-E, whose fragrant forest some distant asswipe was currently smudging with uncontrolled carbon waste. "All right, Charter. I'm not sure who you are or how you got here, but this is unoccupied land. It's not your habitat." Verdance is going to start selling it pretty soon. No harm done. Charter was starting to sound whiny, hinting at the personality of whoever controlled him. "You need to biodegrade everything in this camp and get off this land right now." "This ecosystem is my birthright." Charter planted his feet firmly next to the fire. He held the spit with the hair-skinned, burned body in one hand. "It's the origin of all mankind, and everything we do now is shaped by it." A cool Arctic wind threaded through the forest, and fir tree branches gestured wildly overhead. But Destry felt sweaty, inside and out. She ran an arm across her forehead, smearing the dust on her face into a thin, gritty mud. Walking closer, she gave up the pretense of talking to Charter as if he were alive. Now she looked into the wide purple eyes of the expensive biotech toy and addressed the distant person controlling him. "Listen, you haven't identified yourself, and I don't know where you are coming from. But you put this remote here, and you damaged the forest. You're trespassing. You killed animals, which is a crime. You need to pack up your remote right now and get off Sask-E before I report you to Verdance." She hoped the threat was enough. Charter's controlling could be sued for what he'd done. The only thing preventing her from reporting him right now was the fact that she liked talking to Verdance security about as much as they liked dealing with unique real estate. Sask-E was supposed to terraform itself for another 1,000 years before anyone had to worry about its existence. All right, so that's about 5.5, 6 pages. I think it gives you a good flavor of what this chapter is starting off like. I'm really interested to hear what folks think about what we know about the characters so far, particularly Destry. Also curious to think about what folks think about the hints of technology we've seen so far. Obviously, we have this character Charter, who is a remote being controlled from a foreign world. We have the ability to interact with sensory data from a live planetary environment. Really interesting to think about, to hear about what you guys think about this and where it's going. Would love to see your comments, and let's have a pretty robust discussion from there. And I think from here we will go on and skip ahead to the second chapter. So the next post will be the first few pages of the second chapter, and we'll repeat with the same discussion. So looking forward to see what you guys have to talk about. All right. Bye, guys.